to this fabulous video produced by CCTA. So, Terry Ann, if you want to run the video now.
Oh. Sorry, let me try that again. Oh. There we go.
To COVID-19, this meeting will be conducted as a Zoom meeting pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order N-2920, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. This meeting is being live streamed on the CCTA website. The chair will call upon members, staff, and other speakers by name. Please speak clearly and state your name before giving comments or remarks. Persons participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers. Members participating by Zoom wishing to speak should physically raise their hand and unmute their mic when called upon. Members should remute their mics when done speaking. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the Raise Hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. A 30-second warning will be provided. After 3 minutes, staff will lower their hand and mute their mic. Participants via phone will be called upon by the last 4 digits of their phone number. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received in accordance with the COVID-19 Special Notice for Public Comment Guidelines are printed on the meeting agenda. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Okay, well, thank you. And we are now going to have Terry Ann do our roll call.
All right, Member Allen, did not see her. Absent. Member Haskew.
Here.
Member Hernandez.
Here.
Member Mitchoff.
Here.
Member Obringer. Didn't see her either. Absent. Member Hudson is here for Member Perkins.
I'm here.
Member Ross.
Here.
Member Stepper.
Here.
Member Store. Did not see Member Store either. Okay, absent. Vice Chair Nowak.
Here.
Chair Anderson.
I'm here.
So we've got Store, Obringer, and Allen absent with everyone else present.
Okay, and so we do have a quorum, which is a good thing. So, and we do have one of our new primary member appointments by LABTA is Melissa Hernandez. And you, Melissa, were not able to attend our last meeting after your appointment. And so do you want to introduce yourself to everyone?
Sure. I am just pulling up into my driveway.
Okay.
I'm safely parked. But I am Melissa Hernandez. I'm the mayor of the city of Dublin. And this is my first meeting since I also sit on the mayor's Alameda council conference. And so our meetings are generally about the same time, but Kathy Nurum was chosen to be my alternate. So thank you. And I'm glad to see everyone here this evening.
Great. Well, we're delighted to have you join us, Melissa. So now we're going to just move right down the agenda. We're going to open it up for public comment. And Terry Ann, did we have any public comment ahead of time?
I have not received any written public comment.
Okay. And this is public comment for anything not on today's agenda, but under the purview of this committee. And so I'm going to ask those who are present if there's anyone who wishes to make a public comment. And if so, please raise your virtual hand. And I'm not seeing anyone. And Terry Ann, I'm assuming you're not seeing anyone either.
No public comment.
Okay, so we do have one item on our consent calendar, and that's the approval of our minutes from our April 14th meeting. Are there any changes or comments from the committee on this item? And looking around, I don't see virtual hands. I don't see live hands. So I would entertain a motion, or actually, okay. And if I have a second, then I'll just make sure there's no public comment on it. Okay, I have a motion by Sue, second by Karen. I'll double check any comments from the committee members or anyone of the public? I am not seeing any. So Terry, do you mind doing a roll call vote?
Yes, and I'm sorry, I missed the second. Was that Stepper
No,
or
Karen,
Mitchell?
yeah, I'm sorry, Karen Shepherd. There are too many Karens. Exactly.
Thank you. All right. Member Allen is still absent. Member Haskew?
Yes.
Member Hernandez?
Yes.
Member Mitchoff?
She's saying yes. She's muted.
You. Member Obringer? Still absent. Yes. Member Hudson?
Yes.
Member Ross?
Yes.
Member Store? Did not see them come in. Still absent. Member Stepper?
Here. Yes.
Thank you. Vice Chair Nowak?
Yes.
Thank you. Chair Anderson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously with Member Obringer and Store and Allen absent.
Okay, so let's move right into our regular agenda items. And the first item is informational. There will not be a vote on it, but it will be presented by Tim Hale to provide an update on the Innovate 680 program and project.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Appreciate the opportunity for me to give an update to you what's happening in the Innovate 680 program and projects. We have a brief update, but some exciting updates. One of the things that is really unique of the Innovate 680 program is, as you all know, we have a number of goals as well as outcomes that we're trying to achieve as part of Innovate 680. And because this is a performance-based program, we've essentially outlined, 6 projects as part of the Innovate 680 program. And because these goals are continuing to evolve and continue to really generate new projects, we do look at other things happening in the corridor, other opportunities based on funding, based on projects, to really help continue to achieve all of these goals. And essentially what I'm saying is that we will continue to add more projects to the Innovate 680 program. And I have a few updates for you with that regard. Right now, we have 6 total projects that we're advancing as part of the Innovate 680 program. Some are bigger than others. Some are in different statuses, different stages of delivery. The Express Lane Completion Project, as you know, is really the northbound direction of the 680 and really extending the express lanes from Rudgear all the way up to the Benicia Martinez Bridge. The Part-Time Transit Lane Project is a traditional bus on shoulder project that goes from Bollinger Canyon Road up to Ignacio Valley Road. And it'll be traveling on the outside shoulder between essentially the Bollinger Canyon parking ride and the Walnut Creek BART station. The other project is the Advanced Technology Project. And this is essentially all things related to the connectivity and technology with the Innovate 680 program. Particularly the project that we're advancing right now is the Cooperative Adaptive Rent Metering Project in conjunction and in partnership with Caltrans District 4. And that's really providing a more coordinated, real-time approach to managing congestion through dynamic rent metering. The Shareability Hub project, this is really the first and last mile approach to the whole program, and making sure we're providing those personalized mobility options into our neighborhoods and really bringing transportation out to the people, so people don't need to find transportation. It's practically there, available to them, and accessible. The Automated Driving System grant Automated Driving System project is a grant that we received from US DOT that really looked at 3 use cases in the 680 corridor. How does connected and autonomous vehicles operate within the corridor when they're following close together? And the second one is, how can we leverage automated vehicles and connected vehicles to help improve traffic flow? And then mobility as a service is really the mobile application to really help connect all of this together and really provide the transportation demand management and incentives that we need to really help achieve our mode shift goals. So the current status of these projects: the Express Lane Completion Project, we continue to evaluate our VMT, vehicle miles traveled reduction strategies, as well as evaluate the alternatives through preliminary operational analysis. And we've reviewed those alternatives in detail with you in the past. The Part-Time Transit Lane Project, we are kind of taking a different strategy with this project. We're evaluating how we could better leverage state and federal funding for this project. This project was 100% funded by Measure J local funds. And because of the guidance, because of the timing of the guidance and the delays of potential legislation, we're not able to accelerate this project the way we wanted to. And it's also, we're also evaluating this project as in conjunction with I'll talk about it, in conjunction with the I-680 Express Bus project that we'll be talking about here next. And then the Shareability Hub project, we are looking at, I'm sorry, let me go back to legislation. So we are working with Assemblymember Mullins on the AB 476 on part-time transit lane, and we're working with the California Transit Association, sorry. And then the Share Mobility Hub project, we're really recrafting that project to better support the stops for the I-680 Express Bus service, which I'll talk about in the next few slides. Automated driving system, we got all our contracts underway. We're initiating the work with FTA and we submitted the project management plan. And then mobility as a service, there's actually a lot of exciting things going on here. We're actually in the process of developing the wireframes for the mobile applications and how to really interact with the user in terms of the multimodal trip planner, how to identify themselves, how to find and get access to micromobility options like bike share and scooters, and then as well as the rewards and incentives vendors to help incentivize people to really take other modes of transportation. The Advanced Technology Project, as I mentioned, we're working with Caltrans to develop the planning phases for that project through developing a project initiation document, which is the acronym there in PID, as well as looking at how to better scope that project and integrate it with the overall Caltrans ramp metering project that we've shared with you in the past. Two new projects that we're considering as part of the Innovate 680 program is we've been primarily, if you look at our projects today, a lot of them primarily focus on the state highway system, with the exception of the Share Mobility Hub project, the Mobility as a Service, bringing those bike share and scooter programs into the local jurisdictions. And so what we're now looking at is developing a connected signal system. And this is actually intended to be a countywide system, and really to look at how we can better utilize our signals and leverage new technologies to help identify vehicles in a more efficient, more productive way in real time, as well as prioritizing vehicles in the corridors. Could be emergency vehicles, could be buses, and also looking at ways in controlling and smoothing traffic flow. Also looking at the standpoint of just better coordination of traffic within your cities. For example, in some of the cities, fire evacuation is a priority to them, and so we want to make sure that these signals can accommodate things like that. So these are a smart signal system that really help control traffic flow along our local road systems. And really, the intent is really to help bring people down to the 680 corridor on our major local roads, routes of regional significance, and then be able to prioritize that traffic, such as transit, et cetera, to get down to these share mobility hubs to really help bridge the gap and connect that, make that connected system. So the reason why we're considering developing this project is because this is the project that we submitted as part of the Invest Act with Congressman DeSaulnier. So Congressman DeSaulnier was supporting this project. He was able to put an initial request for $6 million for the 680 corridor and $2 million for the La Miranda region, really to help benefit Innovate 680 program as a whole. And obviously we're waiting to see what happens with the Invest Act as we kind of move forward. But this was all done as part of those member designated projects with our federal delegation, and particularly Congressman DeSaulnier. The other project that we've been really focused on is really coordinating with LAFTA as well as County Connection to really advance this one-seat ride on the 680 corridor. And this is a study that LAFTA has been spearheading in conjunction and in partnership with County Connection, as well as CCTA, as some other stakeholders. And this was particularly of interest to the California State Transportation Agency, and really particularly Chad Edison, which is responsible for the transit programs at the state level. And so we really have, obviously we've been building these relationships with LAFTA and County Connection over time. And we really see this express bus study as an opportunity to really demonstrate what the future of transit can be in this corridor and quite frankly in the region. And so we're looking at particularly stops in Dublin BART Station, the Bollinger Canyon Park and Ride to help service Bishop Branch, Walnut Creek BART, and then the Amtrak Martinez station. So those would be the 4 key stops. And as you can kind of start looking at the other projects that are being done as part of the Innovate 680 program, you can look at how to integrate all of this into one cohesive transit system, both with the Shareability Hub project, the Signal System project, as well as the Mobility as a Service application. And so our goal is to really, we've been having a lot of conversations with Michael Tree and Rick Ramashir and Chad Edison, and really crafting the framework around what this project will look like and be successful in a future transit intercity rail capital program grant, which we do at the end of this year. And so we've had multiple meetings with Chad, and we're really excited because Chad Edison really likes this project. He was the one who funded the study. He really wants to see this study advance. He likes what we're doing as part of the Innovate 680 program, and he would like to see it advance and integrated with the Innovate 680 program. And so we're really excited about this application. We're working closely with our consultant partners and really getting ahead of this one. The guidelines come out in mid-July for the grant application, and then it'll be submitted in December. So those are the new projects that are starting to evolve and be considered as part of the Innovate 680 program. And just happy to take any questions or comments about these updates.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tim. So are there any, Dave, you're flailing, and then Sue. Dave, go ahead.
Tim, it's all good to hear. I guess I'm getting a little jaded. The autonomous vehicle was always coming. It's always coming. I'm still waiting. So I get a little bit more attentive when I hear what the first project is. I mean, I would love for, we've had to talk about mobility hubs. I mean, I'd love to see something there that we could point to. I like the last screen that you showed, that the lights, and I think it's something that can sell to people. I really think the corridor thing may even be the first one, single seat transit. I mean, that's something people can say, oh, I like that. But if we come out of the gate and we're going, look what we're giving you, ramp metering. I mean, I sat on CCTA's ramp metering study with Charlie Abrams. There's a name you haven't heard in a while, Luella. And I'm telling you, we were not what I would call well received. That's not a real big one in the eye. So if we're going to do that, I mean, is there something else, at least a signage or something that can get people excited? Because you do ramp metering alone and nothing else for a year. Innovate 680 isn't going to be the first thing coming out of anybody's mouth during an election.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Okay, Sue.
Oh, sorry, I had to go off mute there. I guess, a question that comes up certainly in Pleasant Hill, so much of this stuff, is Innovate 680, great idea. Let's, we really need to work on that and move traffic along, which will hopefully help some of our cities that get clogged up when, 680 gets too full. But, one of my concerns when I heard countywide traffic system and prioritization, I just want to make sure that we don't always, prioritizing 680 flow doesn't end up further damaging local. We have the Monument entrance and exit on 680, and that's a mess as it is right now. And if it were to slow down because 680 is clogged, that would back up into Pleasant Hill. So I just want to make sure we're balancing these prioritizations on 680 moving to, the local traffic as well.
Yeah, and that ties in with Dave's comment too, just the whole issue of ramp metering's biggest fear for most cities is that it will back up traffic at the cost of moving traffic along. I mean, the obvious benefit, Sue, is going to be if you have any Pleasant Hill residents who are commuting either down to Bishop Branch and San Ramon or to Hacienda or even further, they will benefit from it. But yes, I think the impact on cities, everyone will be concerned about it. Other comments, Karen Stepper.
Okay. I was just going to comment on the synchronization because synchronization of these lights have been so important in our town. and the development of that, so that when you get to a light and hit the button, it almost immediately turns to a walk light without stopping the traffic, because it knows what's happening in all of the lanes. And so when you said you were coordinating, Tim, with Caltrans on some of this, which of course we've always wished we could, sometimes we can, sometimes we can't, but that since they control the freeway exits, if you want to integrate with the cities, that's a really critical part of it. So I'm hoping that's at the forefront of what we're doing.
Well, and as a follow-up, is Caltrans receptive to that, Tim?
Yeah, let me just comment on a few of these things. The ramp metering is really being looked at in conjunction, as one component of the overall system, right? You have all these other things that are being integrated and working together. And so, yeah, we are basically looking, and this is why we have this group, this Innovate 680 Policy Advisory Committee, because there is going to be some challenges and some opportunities, because in order to really make this whole system work together, it has to work seamless and integrated and connected. The ramp meters can't work on completely independent of itself. It has to be coordinated with the traffic flow on the local roads, as well as that smart signal system. So the concept is that you're really trying to maintain traffic flow and connectivity from the time you enter into, say, Bollinger Canyon or Ignacio Valley Road or Concord Boulevard, and then through those signal lights know what's happening down at the 680 corridor. And so those signals are actually timing the amount of traffic that's coming down to the corridor. And then meanwhile, the adaptive ramp metering is essentially coordinated and timing respectively through the corridor between all of the ramps. So that way, for example, one ramp might be held a little longer upstream or downstream to allow another ramp to basically, get exit flow or entry flow from another ramp. So that way you have this consistent coordination, and that way you don't have backup on local streets. You have continual traffic flow. So the type of ramp metering system that we're talking about in this corridor is not your typical ramp metering system that you have on I-80 or on State Route 4. This is a much more advanced ramp metering system that we're talking about as part of the corridor.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Tim. And Karen, do you have a follow-up? And then Mark?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up that our words matter. It certainly happened with the last election in the type of visuals we used and the language. So when I hear you talk about it, Tim and Candace, and we're talking about ramp metering, and everyone thinks not that it's different from that, but it's the same as it always was, that we can go down to 580 and it means we're going to be slowed down and it's going to clog our streets. Why aren't we using like ramp flow? Why don't we use new words that say what we want it to look like, so that when we go forward in the future looking for a measure, that we have that in people's minds, that this is not the same old thing. This is something that's actually really going to help our traffic.
Yeah, absolutely, that's a great comment.
Okay, so Mark, was your hand up, or were you just?
No, I'm just.
Okay, you're okay.
I'm doing the Rodin the Thinker type of pose.
That's okay.
But I did have a question for Tim. Tim, is this the same presentation you're going to give TransPAC next week?
So TransPAC is actually requesting a Gomentum update.
Okay.
So we're going to be providing an update at what's happening at Gomentum Station, which for everyone on the call, that's the secure 5,000 acre secure autonomous vehicle tested at the former Concord Naval Weapons Station. So say that 5 times fast. But so yeah, that's going to be the presentation in terms of what's happening at Gomentum Station next Thursday.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
We're special then. Thank you.
Yes, you are. Okay. Are there any other questions by members of the committee? I'm not seeing any. How about the public? Is there anyone who is in our meeting who would like to speak? If you could please raise your virtual hand. I am not seeing any. So thank you very much, Tim. And we're going to go right into our next agenda item, which is also informational. And it's going to be presented by Liz Justison and Danielle Stanislaus. And we're going to be talking about the development of the Innovate 680 Technical Advisory Committee concept of operations and its related policy issues and the next steps. So a very general update. Thank you.
That was certainly a mouthful. So this is Liz Justison, and I'm going to kick this discussion off. on an update on some of the policies, or not an update, kind of a reminder where we're at on some of the policy discussions for Innovate 680 that we've brought to you in the last couple of months, as well as a discussion on 4 new policy issues, and then a discussion on next steps. So next slide. I could go to the next one. So this is just a reminder for everybody of all these things that we talk about for Innovate 680, that it's a really well-connected system of systems that allows an end user to basically, as Tim says, that have microtransit show up at their house, that they're able to hail it from an app and make the best decision for their mode of travel that day based upon the real-time data that is shared between lots of different systems, that they're going to be given lots of different options, from driving alone, hopefully not, to a shared autonomous vehicle, to taking transit, to using first last mile solutions. And all of that information is going to be nicely bundled up for the end user to make the best decision for their travel that day. But what that means is that we have to have a lot of different systems talking to each other, physically connected, sometimes data sharing, and in order to make that all happen, there's a technical side of it, but there's also a lot of policies that we need to come together on and get an understanding of where this group wants to go. So I want everybody just to, this is going to be really important for one of the policy issues, so just take a mental picture of this and kind of, it's not intended to be complex on purpose. It really is going to need to be this many integrated systems coming together. So I want everybody just take a mental snapshot of this before we dive into the policy issues. The next slide. So just a reminder of some of the things we've talked about and what we are assuming going forward is that at the heart of that entire network of different systems, that we will have a centralized decision support system. And that centralized decision support system is going to be taking in information from different places and then putting out results. So a really good way of thinking about that was how Tim just described how the local signals will be coordinating with the Caltrans ramp metering system. That requires that 2 systems come together and talk and make decisions together and are coordinated. So what we're referring to that as is as the centralized decision support system. So that is a baseline assumption we have that is needed to make sure that Innovate works. It also requires that that system has data. And that we are going to have a centralized data hub, call it, or a data center that is pulling in information from the highway and how it's operating, what is BART running on time, what is the availability of microtransit at any given time, possibly some information on incentives that we want to be pushing out. That data needs to be stored somewhere and be available in real time. So these are 2 fundamental policies that we're using going forward to make sure that Innovate comes together. Next slide. There's also a couple of others that we've brought before, which is delegated control. That means that it won't necessarily be that each individual operator is controlling everything, because that centralized system is going to need to take control of the multiple systems. So I'm just going to stick with the ramp metering and the transit or the local signals, is that, for instance, it could be that Caltrans is controlling both their ramp meterings and possibly local road signals, or vice versa, that the local roads are able to have control over the centralized system, and then that controls ramp metering. But delegated control means that one agency might be giving up or allowing another agency to control their systems on their behalf. We're also assuming that this is going to be real-time and automated. So there isn't going to be operators saying, oh, look, Ignacio Valley is looking really, really bad. We're going to need to start slowing down the signals on there so that people flow better into the ramp meterings. The system is going to do that on its own. It's going to be a set of algorithms that are worked, improve over time and take in information and are refined, but that this all happens in real time by a system. But we still want to make sure that there is somebody looking at it. So we assume there will also be some sort of centralized operations center where humans are looking at the system, maybe making tweaks, being able to respond if there's an emergency, and give feedback to the system or change something if it's not working. So those are just a summary of some of the key discussions we've had so far and some of the baseline assumptions we have for policies going into Innovate 680. Next slide. So this is my third time presenting on policies. If you recall, we had two different presentations on transit policies. The first one was a really long meeting, so we didn't get to go into it too much. But the last meeting, we spent time talking about connection protection, data sharing, shoulder use, and regional fare integration. So today, we're going to be doing a little bit of a deeper dive on transit priority, first and last mile solutions, Tdm Program Coordination, and a shared network communication system. So the coloring is important. Gray, we've already talked about. Light blue is what we're talking about today. And then the darker blue are some of the upcoming policies that we still need to bring to you that we need to get some feedback on to see how it will impact the overall program. So with that, I'm going to dive into our first one. So next slide, Terry Ann. On transit priority. So on each one of these, I'm going to do a little overview of what we're talking about when we say transit priority, then tell you a little bit about what the issue is and what we're trying to get feedback on, and also some things that might impact transit or each one of these issues. So I think it's pretty easy to know what transit priority means is that you're going to prioritize transit, but how that gets translated on Innovate 680 means that you might be looking at some physical improvements and techniques to help prioritize transit. That could be allowing for modifications to the signage and to the signal phasing. So as Tim was talking about, having really optimized flow along the arterials, well, part of that flow might be also having optimized flow for any of the routes that have transit on them. So the buses can get through Ignacio and get through all these corridors faster. It also could be some dedicated bus lanes or some queue jump lanes. Queue jump lanes are when you come up to an intersection that might be pretty crowded, and there's a jump lane where the bus gets to kind of prioritize, get in front at the very front of the signal, jump in front, and be the first one out of the gates. Prioritizing them with ramp metering, part-time transit lanes, et cetera. So those are kind of some of the physical improvements or the system improvements that you can look at. But the question and the issue is, do stakeholders want to prioritize transit for the 680 corridor? Would you want to prioritize funding for projects that are transit focused and that will improve operations for transit and continue to prioritize how they function? And also, would you want to explore transit even if it's at the degradation of other modes? And lastly, how should we consider private shuttles and shared autonomous vehicles? Are they considered transit, and how do they kind of fit into the landscape of prioritization? So some of the additional considerations, a lot of the recent requests for funding around transit signal priority ITS infrastructure and communication needs. There will be some needs to get some basic infrastructure in there. How the signal timing, Tim had the perfect example how the signal timing will work with ramp metering, regional transit service lines that pass through the corridor. So how do we want to handle transit that doesn't necessarily end or start within the Innovate system? Equity and accessibility, which will be a consideration for each one of these policies. And then lastly, first and last mile connections. So I'm going to go through each 4 of these policy issues, and then we'll have time to get your feedback on any one of these. So the next one is first and last mile connections. So what is a first last mile connection? That is basically taking you from your trip origin or destination to a more established transportation node. And these could be in the form of walking, biking, bike share, car share, e-scooters, micromobility, and on-demand transit. So what's the policy issue? Is how do we want to prioritize first and last mile solutions for the 680 corridor? And should they be incentivized, and how? And I think this is a really interesting one. Should you prioritize and incentivize certain first last mile modes over others? For example, would you prioritize somebody who chooses to walk or somebody who chooses to take an on-demand transit? And what policies should be in place when working with third-party vendors? So what I specifically mean here is if there's a reliance on the Ubers and Lyfts in the world, what kind of things do you want to have set in place to ensure protection and how you're working with a third-party vendor. Also, this is going to become a bigger consideration when you're thinking about longevity of some of the possible third-party vendors. I think Uber and Lyft are here to stay, but there are other solutions for first last mile that don't have the history that those companies have. Other considerations are coordination with the mobility on demand and other TDM strategies, transit priority, equity and accessibility, and shared autonomous vehicles and microtransit, and how those fit into the landscape of first and last mile solutions. Okay, I'm going to keep plowing through to our third, and this is Tdm Program Coordination. So most of you probably have heard of it. It comes in different forms. People call it transportation, traffic, or travel demand management. It is really an application of strategies and policies to reduce travel or to redistribute it. So getting people to work, travel at different times or in different spaces or in different modes to kind of optimize the entire system. It allows us to encourage and incentivize the modes that will best help kind of normalize the system. So what I mean is you can incentivize people to take travel off peak. You can incentivize people not to travel on the state highway system if it's impacted. You can prioritize underutilized modes. You can prioritize and incentivize looking at carpooling. These are all different TDM strategies. And so in the region, there are some existing TDM programs. There is Contra Costas, there is the Regional 501 Carpool Program. So how does Innovate work with those existing regional TDM programs? And should Innovate 680 have its own TDM program? And what might that look like? And what kind of incentives are people wanting to use and stakeholders want to use to incentivize different modes? So some other considerations, again, how is this going to be reflected in the mobility on demand? Integration with the existing and including those existing TDM programs that are outside of Contra Costa County. Coordination with employers and incentives for telework options. Mode shift incentives, equity, and parking and curbside management are some things we want to consider when we're thinking about policies around TDM. And then lastly, our fourth policy issue for today is on shared network communications. So this is where I asked you guys to take the mental snapshot. And that's because what is going to be required from a physical infrastructure for network communications is going to be robust. You're going to want to have a very reliable, redundant system to make sure that the systems can coordinate and integrate and also share data amongst them. So that there is some capital costs associated with that. To get the physical, fiber out there, to get servers, and potentially start getting some third-party lease lines to make sure all the connections are happening. So what the question is while it's plausible to do this all on the Innovate, it's probably not the best use of public funds. So are agencies willing to share a network infrastructure? Are they interested just for primary, or would they allow agencies not for primary, but for the secondary? Are there existing agreements out there that could be leveraged? Making sure we understand what infrastructure exists today and what can be shared amongst that. And what is needed what kind of agreements are needed to get this shared system going? And specifically, what kind of agreements for using an existing regional fiber network, which there is some of already on the corridor. So considerations, redundancy, it's going to be really critical. You think of somebody going out there and cutting fiber along the 680 corridor, what you still need to have the system running. So it needs to have a redundant path to keep Innovate 680 running the entire time. It also needs to have really good bandwidth so that the data is there at everybody's fingertips. Data security, also physical security, fiber sharing agreements, and then technology standards that would need to be in place to make sure that this is the most up-to-date and robust shared network system. So those are the four policy issues. I know I hope I went through those slow enough that you guys all got them. So I think the next slide has Danielle facilitating a little discussion around these four topics.
Thanks, Liz. So Danielle Stanislas, and I serve with Liz as a part of the system management team. And as you know, I also serve as your stakeholder engagement manager. So Chair Anderson, we were hoping that you could assist us. I do have a couple of slides after this to wrap up on this item and kind of put a bow on it. But before we do that, we wanted to take a moment and have some discussion. As Liz said, she did cover a lot, but we tried to do so efficiently. And so on the screen before you are the 4 issues that we were hoping to have some hearty discussion on today, and a couple of additional questions that we would ask you guys, just so that we have a good sense to make sure that for this program ConOps, we are cataloging all of the various key policy issues. We're not going to solve them in the program ConOps that we're working on, but it lays the foundation for what's to come next. So we need to make sure we have a good grapple around the extensiveness and the main concerns that you guys have. So a couple other questions for you all to consider as you discuss any of the 4 issues or all of the 4 issues. Are there any additional related policy issues, perhaps that we didn't cover in the additional considerations that Liz went through for each of the 4 key issues? And then also just for us to understand what additional conversations you all may have had with your communities, your constituents, your fellow board or council members around this larger goal that we have for the Innovate program about incentivizing mode shift. And specifically any conversations you've had around prioritizing any of the modes, as Liz was alluding to. So with that, Chair Anderson, I'll take your assistance and we can pivot back to any of the 4 slides that had the issue as needed for any of you that want to speak to some of the issues.
Well, why don't we do this? Let's go ahead and not share the screen just so we can all see each other. And I have the 4 issues written down. And then if someone wants to see a slide, we'll pop back into share mode. So let's just sort of go down the list. Start first with transit priority. Is there anyone who, okay, let's start with you, Sue. Your thoughts on it.
Well, you know, I sit on the County Connection board, and I sort of see this as a chicken and egg, because if we prioritize transit, hopefully more people will see its more efficient movement down 680, and therefore more people will use it. It's because if we don't get the usage up, then I think, you know, I'm not sure it should be prioritized unless the usage of it is really sufficient to make it worthwhile. So in my mind, it's kind of a chicken and egg thing. Does that make any sense, what I just said?
Yeah, you know, it does. And I think one of the issues too that we've confronted, and since several of us do sit on the County Connection board, is, you know, how do we capture those people who already like transit because they lived in a city and now they move out to our suburbs and they want to hop on a bus. They don't want to have 3 cars in the family. Or how do we capture the students who surprisingly love to ride buses, and you can't get a lot of 16, 17, 18-year-olds to even get their driver's license. So you know, a lot of it is almost a marketing. And again, I think from my perspective too, if you scatter too many different things out there, it's hard to really prioritize one. So I kind of like focusing on buses, and when people start to see it's a reliable transportation, they will, but it will take some really good marketing too. So other comments about, oh, Tim, go ahead, and then Dave has a comment.
I think Commissioner Hudson was before me, so I'll let Commissioner
Okay.
Hudson.
Well, I think I'm going to hit the same thing you were looking at, Tim, as long as I'm not on mute. Good. I'm tired of embarrassing myself. Stupid red line. To me, the priority really is something that you're already working on, Tim. Priority is very specific. Transit, yeah, there's lots of transit, but the mobility hub and that thing you're working on with Michael Tree and Rick Ramesir for that hydrogen transit bus with 1 seat. I think you have that thing going all the way even into Sonoma, and that puts us in good stead, I hope, with the Blue Ribbon committee that's going to come in and say, yeah, that's the best thing going and we want that, because you can get funding for it. That's the key to this whole thing that we were talking about. You can get funding for clean air stuff. So either it's an electric bus or a hydrogen bus and the price is coming down. I mean, I was amazed when Gillig said they would switch back from electric to the hydrogen, but they were specific for the Innovate 680 Program Project et al. I really think that's the top priority right there, and everything else will follow.
Okay, great. And Tim, why don't you comment, and then other board members who wish to say something.
Yeah, I mean,
Committee
member Hudson, you're spot on. I think transit priority, you have to have the dedicated space for transit. I think that is it's a priority for the state. It's a priority for our region. And I think it's really, obviously, with going through the COVID-19 pandemic, we're all really focused on transit recovery. And I think what's really interesting, and that's why we did this travel behavior study, is, we did find people in the corridor that want to find other modes of transportation other than their cars. And if you recall, we called them champions of change. So there's about 14% of the travelers in 680 are looking for other options. And so I think that's really important. And I think it's really the only way we're going to get people in the transit is we got to make it attractive and efficient. And I think in terms of the priority piece, we are working, it doesn't really get captured too well, and it's kind of buried in the advanced technology project, but we are working with MTC on an idea grant where it actually prioritizes buses based on the number of people that are in the bus. So that way we're not prioritizing empty buses, we're prioritizing full, like 50% or more buses, because I think it's important that we just don't have these empty buses, taking up these lanes. It's important that we're prioritizing, buses that have people in them that kind of show the benefit. So that's one aspect that we are working on with MTC, as well as some of our other local partners here, Walnut Creek, Concord. And so I just want to make mention of that, because I know it's a lot of different projects, but it all comes together into one cohesive system at the end.
Thank you, Tim, for that. Any other comments on this? Mark, are you raising your hand, or are you just sort of I'm just going to ignore you. Just keep your hands on your lap, okay? Okay, Luella. We can't hear you, no, but you don't look like you're muted.
But it sounded great.
Let me unmute her. Oh, no. Let's see.
I bet it was really, really good. Okay, sorry about that. Or if you want to put something in the chat, well, we could see that. Sorry. Okay, other board members. And well, if you're able to work that out, we can have you, even if we're on the next item, you can speak then. Okay, any other comments on transit priority? And let's just jump right down then to first and last mile connections, which I know something all of us are always concerned about. Who has comments about the first and last mile? Mr. Hudson, go ahead, please.
I have so many comments, I'm not going to make any. The one thing I didn't see on there, though, was the e-bike. And the minute they find a docking system that works for that, bike sharing is going to explode even more than it is now. But e-bikes, I made the statement today, Candace, 243% increase in biking on the Iron Horse Trail in San Ramon just during COVID.
Yep, no, a lot of that. And we're looking at doing that lane separation on the Iron Horse corridor. And that's something that we hope to do as we move forward with that. That is a great last mile, there's no question. Okay, oh, and here, Luella's coming back in. So Luella, can we hear you? Let's see if she...
Make her a co-host.
Oh, okay.
Member Haskew?
Well, I saw her coming in. Okay, well, let's see if anyone else has any first and last mile comment. Karen Stepper. We can't hear you either, but you're muted, so that's different.
On the, sorry, Iron Horse Trail. You're talking about looking for the separated lane for what section of the Iron Horse Trail?
If you go back and you look at the whole Iron Horse corridor study that the county did last year, it identified where it was possible within each of our jurisdictions. And so again, there's not a specific project other than there's some that actually are a little bit further north, more in the Concord, Pleasant Hill area that have, I think, are further along than down in the south end, but ultimately having that lane separation to me is very critical. And I've asked our county staff to try to have some shovel-ready projects, even if we don't have the funding yet, for that lane separation, because to me, it's going to be a very helpful
Thank you.
There has a dedicated bike lane too. We have money for it from the Air District.
Perfect. Okay, other comments about first and last miles? Okay, then let's just move right along. Tdm Program Coordination. Any cities have an amazing TDM that they think we all should be following? Or, I mean, do we have sort of a model, Tim, for CCTA that we want? Because I know with the county, when we have projects that come to us that are on a large scale, it's really kind of a, let's try this for your TDM, or maybe you should try this, and maybe someday you can, land your drone airplane on the roof of your building, and that will be your transit. But for now, we need something better.
Yeah, we at CCTA, we've got a very robust TDM program through our Contra Costa 511 program, and there's lots of different aspects of it. There's guaranteed ride home. We did a pilot with the Scoop, for carpooling. We did a pilot. We just recently and we're still continuing this pilot for e-bike share and making sure we provide rebates so people can purchase e-bikes. And to Member Hudson's comments, e-bike is essential, to a lot of this. I mean, if any of you have not rode an e-bike yet, I highly encourage it. It definitely is a game changer. And I think that the other component is also our Miles app. And so if you haven't downloaded Miles, we do have Miles here in Contra Costa County. And that is one that really kind of tracks how many miles that you're taking on each mode. And then you can actually incentivize people through either challenges or accumulating points to either get free tickets or purchase different gift cards for Starbucks or In-N-Out or whatever. And so these are all things that we're trying to really help use those things to incentivize people to get into other modes of transportation. And it's a really neat idea. I have it. I'm actually a platinum member because I don't have a car. And so I'm getting around with my bike and other things. So but I think it's a really neat it kind of takes the airline mile concept and applies it to essentially TDM.
That's great. Other comments about TDM, the utilization of 511 in all of our communities. And again, it is a fabulous resource and has been for many years, but I always worry we're not taking as much advantage of it as we are. And a lot of it, of course, is marketing rolling those out. But with new development, it's also nice if they can incorporate some of those principles in it. Dave?
Yeah,
Bishop Ranch, you have it. A good.
It'd be interesting to see how the pilot program works that we have between Dublin Barton and I guess we extended it in Bishop Ranch. I think that thing is just, I mean, I would love to have that electric bus that we were at 24 foot, kind of like just constantly rotating, similar to what you see at airports. I think there's a demand for that. But we'll see. It's a pilot program. If it's extended, and we'll probably have it before us, Candace.
Yeah.
A few months, but I think it's working.
Okay, great. Any other comments about TDM program coordination? Okay, so now we're going to move down to the shared network communications, and yeah, that's something I don't know that we think about enough of the fiber needed to connect all of these smart programs. And if our cities have the infrastructure, and the cost of that is going to be profound. Any comments about shared network communications? Go ahead, Sue.
So my only comment is really a question. I sat in on some of the Blue Ribbon Task Force, and they're still trying to figure out an entity that would coordinate all the transit services potentially. And I would think that would dovetail a lot into how this data management works, because I would hate to see sort of one group control data, another group control the actual transit, things like that. It just seems like there's a lot of things that have to be worked out to figure out how that data can be best shared and best used across all the entities.
Yeah. Other comments?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dave.
This is my last meeting. Back at the very beginning, it's kind of after the Ford I call it the connecting boxes, whatever that slide was. There was one slide that had me a little bit concerned because we've had problems, both at League of California Cities and when we tried to put together the bus on shoulder, and it had CHP and dispatch, and I never saw CHP again. I mean, is CHP okay? We're not worried about anything. I mean, they could say no at any time and things just stop. What was that CHP and dispatch, and does it have anything to do with what we're talking about now?
And
So I'll take that. This is Liz.
Liz.
So the CHP dispatch is more from a thinking about it from their CAD system gets information on incidents. So it's going to be one of our primary places. So when the network diagram, the box, all the connected boxes, CHP dispatch, that's to make sure that the centralized decision support system gets information that says there's an accident in the left lane and that is blocked. So you're going to need to start, slowing down your ramp metering or whatever in reaction to it. That was the point of having that.
My point is they're on board and we're not having any more problems with them. Right, Tim? He's raising his hand.
Let me take that one. So CHP has been an integral partner of the entire Innovate 680 program. So they're actually attending tonight as public, and they always have a representative at all levels of the Innovate 680 program. At this level, the TAC level, the program leadership team, as well as the strategic development team as well. And then I also have a monthly meeting with the Golden Gate chief of CHP, and we keep them apprised of everything as part of Innovate 680. And they've been a great partner in every step of the way as part of the program. Obviously, I'll make it known, they still have concerns about bus on shoulder that we need to continue to work out. But those are things that we need to kind of work closely together as stakeholders, as partners to really kind of develop the kind of meet their priorities of safety. We don't want to operate a bus on shoulder that's not safe. And so their number one priority is safety. And so we want to make sure that we're operating bus on shoulder in a very safe way and really kind of meets their needs, because at the end of the day, that is their office, and we need to take that in account and respect that and work closely with them in terms of operations and implementation of bus on shoulder.
Okay, and we do have Commander Sherry with us, and I don't know, Commander, if there's anything you want to add to what Tim just said. Apparently not, but thank you.
No, I
there
was
you are.
unmuting myself. I had to be given permission to unmute.
Oh,
No,
I'm
I'm just hello, Supervisor. Thank you for acknowledging me. I'm just an observer in this meeting as the commander of the Dublin CHP. On this line, we have representatives from our division who could better speak to these issues.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, we're glad you're there. And if anyone from CHP wishes to comment, they're welcome to, but we appreciate the cooperative effort we have in this whole process and project.
Yeah, hi guys, this is Sean Wilkenfeld with CHP. I think the question was just concerning the security regarding the CAD system, the automated dispatch. And the biggest issue with that is we have two versions of the CAD. We have the media version of the CAD, which is published on the internet. It's freely available for everyone. There's lots of open source programs that use it. And then we have the confidential CAD, and the confidential CAD is an unrestricted. It has all the incidents going on from surveillance to crashes. It has all the personal information from all the logs as well. So we're just concerned making sure that CAD, it has to meet DOJ requirements because it has confidential information in it.
Great. Thank you for that clarification, Sean. Appreciate it. Any other comments? Karen Stepper, I saw you were speaking.
Yeah, just a quick comment on the communications network, because it's almost should be number one here, because we can't go put up a system that we can't communicate with all of these entities that are on that flow chart. We can't just go down the way it happened with eBricks. It took a long time to get everybody on the same system and a lot of money. And some people came on right before then with a different system. And so the sooner we can get out what we're looking at, anybody who's thinking of putting other kinds of networking in should be thinking about this project. So,
okay, great point. Okay, other comments about all those? We were also posed the questions about whether there are any other policy issues related to the above issues that have been raised: the transit priority, first and last connections, miles connection, TDM, and shared network communications. Any other policy issues that you want to discuss? And I am not seeing any. Or the other question that was posed to us was, what conversations have you had with your communities and or fellow board members and council members about incentivizing mode shift and prioritizing transit? Anyone have? Go ahead, Sue, please.
I think it's just starting to have a discussion about it with our, housing elements. We're just starting to address our housing element, and with all the increased housing, how do we address the increased housing and the concern that always comes up on traffic? And so having to talk about what's being done on the transportation side is going to be really important as we talk about having to do all this increased zoning for denser housing in our communities.
Yep, great point. Mr. Hudson.
Boy, she's never going to let me in another meeting as long as. I think the thing that has made a difference, and it's hard to say how much of a difference because of COVID, was the free rides. And I think we're going to extend it to County Connection through September. I'm looking for a nod there.
Yeah, I think
but
that's
one of the things that really sold our city walk was 3 or 4 new transit stops and free transit for anybody that lives or works within Bishop Ranch. And that was the whole idea. If you're within a mile of where you work, you don't need to use your car. So as soon as we can get that thing built and see it working, the better off I think we all are. And I really think the connection with Innovate 680 is going to exacerbate, it's not the word, but make it better. How's that sound?
Accelerate. How about accelerate?
That's it. That's it.
Okay, well, welcome back. Let's try you. You're muted now. Oh, there you go.
I re-logged in and everything. So my first comment was with the item regarding what our priority was, and it applies to transit. And I am going to echo Sue Nowak's statement. It's really important that we prove that it is a good system. We really need to make buses and the mode of transit attractive. And it's just running a bus up and down the street at a random time isn't going to make it attractive. We've got to find a way to make that happen. With regard to our conversation, Walnut Creek is doing its own mobility studies, and we're going to get down a path. And I have no idea if anybody even knows we're doing, well, yes, they do because they've worked with them. But I think we need to make sure that all of the cities who are doing their own mobility alternatives and procedures and policies work together so that we're not having to fix things later on.
Okay, great. Thank you. Tim.
I wanted to recognize Golden Gate Chief Chris Costigan. He's on the call, and want to just offer him an opportunity to make any comments about what we were previously discussing relative to CHP. I'm not sure if he's having audio issues.
Tim, this is Danielle. It seems like he's having some audio issues. He's trying to get back in, so that might be the issue.
Okay, yeah, and very happy to have him make any comments once he returns to us. Okay, any other comments that you've had or discussions that you've had with your colleagues, with members of the community about incentivizing this mode shift? Maybe more people onto transit. Okay, I think that is the end of our discussion. And so we are going to turn it back to our presenters to continue. I think you said there were a couple more slides you wanted to share with us.
Correct. Thank you, Chair Anderson. So whenever we get back to that slide, there's just a couple more to kind of put a bow on the conversation. Great. Okay. So I just wanted to articulate some of the next steps and why these conversations that we're having matter so much. So next slide, please. So as you guys saw from the prior slide, we are systematically going through these policy issues, and we need to have these conversations with you because they're going to allow us to get a sense of where we need to go when we take the next step after this program ConOps document. Because this program ConOps document, as you've heard Liz articulate many times, it outlines the operational vision of the Innovate 680 corridor. It outlines and does a test drive of some of the specific end user scenarios that show how we're going to use that complicated diagram, that system architecture, to bring to life the full vision. And we want to make sure that we are having these conversations, documenting these issues. And so this is just a look ahead to some of the additional policy issues. I want to bring your attention to some of the things that you all have mentioned earlier about balancing freeway and arterial operations. We understand that. That's a topic that we want to spend some more time talking with you all in the future. Also, I heard in passing some topics around the O&M issue, not just who's going to operate what parts of the system, how is it going to be integrated, but how is it also going to be funded, and how is it all going to be sustainable in the end. So those are conversations to look forward to in coming PAC meetings. Next slide, please. So where we also go next in terms of giving you guys a look ahead at what's to come, I don't know if the slide has changed on your end, but it hasn't on mine. And just in case it's my lag, I'll keep talking. So we have a look ahead for the rest of calendar year 2021.
Okay, it has, hold just a moment, please. It has not yet changed. So I don't, there we go.
Okay, perfect. Sometimes I never know if it's just my internet connection. All right, so this is the look ahead for the rest of this year. And as you can see, we're wrapping up the first draft of the program ConOps. And why we stress that it's a draft is because this is a living document. The more we continue to develop and deliver the different aspects of the program, we do need to go back and revisit and update this document. But we need to have a decent draft of it so that we can pivot to what you see shown in green, which is the implementation plan. And that is where we take all of these policy issues that we're talking about with you all that are articulated in the ConOps document that your staff member at your jurisdictions and your transit agencies have been actively participating with us in the development of. We take a look at how to make those next steps, tackling those policy issues, actionable. And that's where the implementation plan comes into play. And we're going to start that development in the fall. What that means and looks like in terms of outreach and engagement with you all, as you know, we have your final meeting of the year scheduled for October. But your staff, the TAC ConOps working group, they are going to be convened in the fall again. They had been meeting regularly, almost monthly over the past year to develop the draft document. But we're going to look to convene that group again starting in the fall so that we can really have them engaged in the development of the implementation plan. You can also see that we're continuing our series of board briefings. So many of you are getting a little bit of double duty of Innovate 680 over these coming months as we continue to make sure that the rest of the CCTA board is briefed on all of these topics and conversations, because when it does come time for some ultimate decision-making authority, the board will have that final say. You all serve as key input as the advisory committee, but all of the final decision-making authority rests with the board. So we want to make sure that everybody's in the loop. So those are the next steps. And with that, I think that wraps up this item. And if there are any additional questions or comments, happy to field those.
Okay, and it looks like Tim has a comment, or go ahead, Tim, and then we'll see if anyone else in the public wishes to comment.
I would like to try this one more time with Chief.
Okay.
So.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, finally. Hey, thank you for your time. This is Chris Kossig. I'm the chief at Golden Gate Division with the CHP. And I just want to reiterate what Tim said. We've been working very closely. CHP does have concerns with the part-time transit lane relative to safety, making sure that we're not increasing dangers to people on the roadway. A lot of that is involved in statewide issues. In fact, I'm working on four different part-time transit lane projects throughout the Bay Area right now, and ensuring consistency in those operations is also a priority for us. So communication is great. I appreciate everybody's input and time. The other issue is emerging technologies. And I've been part of some wrong way driver working groups and in talking with Tim about some possibilities with emerging technologies, maybe having some warning systems incorporated, those that might assist us with dealing with wrong way drivers and other roadway impediments for the safety of motorists moving forward. It's encouraging for us to see the potential for those, and we look forward to working with everybody moving forward. So if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer for you.
Okay, any questions for CHP? Does not look like it. So thank you very much. And before we leave this agenda item, is there any additional comment? Not seen any of that. Okay, so now we're going to move on. And this is also something that I believe we're going to have Danielle walk us through with some additional Policy Advisory Committee feedback, and PAC members we're going to have an opportunity to provide more feedback or comments for future agenda items.
Thank you, Chair Anderson. Tim, you can go to the next slide. So I think, as per our usual, if there's anything else that you all have on your minds that you would like to discuss at upcoming meetings, we can most certainly agendize that. So now would be the time. What you see in front of you is our next meeting date. It's the last one of this year. So at our next meeting in October, we will calendar the meetings for 2022. My goodness, it's so crazy to me that we're already having that conversation. But if there's any additional topics that you guys would like to see brought to the next meeting, now would be the time to let us know. Otherwise, as you could see from the prior slide, we have a slew of additional policy related topics that we envision bringing to you all.
Okay, so any board members, I can't see you. Now I can. Okay. Anyone have any other 680 issues that they would like us to discuss at a future meeting on our October date or going into 2022? I am not seeing anybody with their hands up. So I do not believe we have any correspondence or communications, unless there's something Tim or anyone else wants to bring up. Okay, then we are ready to adjourn. And I'm sorry we didn't adjourn in time for Mark to get to his meeting and adjourn with us, but we came within 11 minutes, so we were close. I think this is the shortest PAC meeting we've had so far. But anyway, look forward to seeing all of you. I know I will see all of you before October 13th, but thank you for your participation and have a good evening and a very happy 4th of July as well. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.